to say about me. I love to sing and I love...
He was, without question, the king of cool. With a glass of whiskey in one hand, a cigarette in the other, and a microphone at the ready, Dean Martin projected an aura of such effortless charm that he became one of the most beloved entertainers of the 20th century. His voice was velvet, his smile could melt hearts, and his presence on stage was pure, unadulterated charisma. He was the man every man wanted to be and every woman wanted to be with. The world saw a star who had it all: immense talent, staggering fame, and an easygoing nature that seemed to float right above the pressures of life. But behind that famous, easy smile was a man haunted by a private pain so profound it would eventually shatter his spirit and lead him into a lonely, self-imposed exile. The laughter stopped, the music faded, and the light in his eyes dimmed, replaced by a permanent shadow of sorrow. This is the tragic story of how a father's worst nightmare destroyed an icon, and how the woman he loved faced her own final curtain after a lifetime marked by an almost unimaginable level of family tragedy. This is the story of the awful ending of Dean Martin and his wife, John. Before the bright lights of Vegas and the Rat Pack, the world knew him as Dino Paul Crocheti, born June 7, 1917, in the gritty, working-class town of Steubenville, Ohio. As the son of Italian immigrants, Gaetano and Angela Crocheti, young Dino grew up speaking Italian. In fact, he didn't start speaking English until he was 5, an experience that left him feeling like an outsider and contributed to a shy nature few would ever see in his adult life. Life in Steubenville was tough, and Dino wasn't interested in school. He dropped out in the 10th grade, famously saying he thought he was smarter than his teachers. He then took on a series of rough-and-tumble jobs that were a far cry from Hollywood glamour. He worked in a steel mill, delivered bootleg, liquor, and even stepped into the boxing ring as Kid Crochet. He wasn't a great fighter. He won just a handful of his dozen bouts, but he walked away with a broken nose, a few split knuckles, and the hard lesson that he needed a better way to make a living. That better way was music. Dino had always loved to sing, mimicking crooners like Bing Crosby. He started performing with local bands, and his natural baritone and laid-back style began turning heads. It was a band leader who suggested a name change. Dino Crocheti was too long for a marquee. So he became Dean Martin, a name that was smoother, more American, and destined for the stars. His confidence grew with every gig. He learned how to command a stage not with noise, but with an almost lazy charm, often mumbling jokes or acting like he'd forgotten the lyrics, which only made audiences love him more. It was during this time he married his first wife, Elizabeth Betty Ann MacDonald, in 1941, and they had 4 children. But the pressure of his growing career put an immense strain on their relationship. Dean was paying his dues, but he was still just a regional act. He was searching for the spark that would catapult him to the big time. Then, in 1946, at the Glass Hat Club in New York City, he found it. Or rather, he found him, a skinny, hyperactive comedian named Jerry Lewis. Their first meeting was casual, but when they paired up on stage, it was an absolute explosion. The world of entertainment was about to be turned upside down. The pairing of Dean Martin and Jerry Lewis was pure lightning in a bottle. On paper, it made no sense. Dean was the impossibly smooth straight man, and Jerry was a whirlwind of chaotic energy. But when they took the stage, the contrast was magic. Dean would try to sing a ballad while Jerry smashed plates or launched into a manic tirade. Dean's unflappable calm in the face of Jerry's hurricane of comedy was something audiences had never seen. Their rise was meteoric. From nightclubs to radio and a lucrative film contract, Martin and Lewis became the biggest act in America. For 10 years, from 1946 to 1956, they were on top of the world, churning out hit movies like The Caddy and Artists and Models. But behind the scenes, the partnership was cracking. Dean often felt like a prop for Jerry's antics, his own talent overshadowed. He grew tired of the formulaic movies and the relentless pace. On July 25, 1956, 10 years to the day after they first teamed up, Martin and Lewis performed their final show. The split was bitter and painful, and they wouldn't speak for 2 decades. Many in Hollywood figured Dean's career was over without Jerry. They couldn't have been more wrong. Freed from the comedy duo, Dean Martin launched a solo career that would become even bigger than his time with Lewis. He went back to singing, and songs like That's Amore, Memories Are Made of This, and his signature tune, Everybody Loves Somebody, dominated the charts. He also silenced his critics with a serious acting career, delivering a powerful performance in the 1958 war drama, The Young Lions. He became a charismatic leading man, starring in classics like the Western Rio Bravo alongside John Wayne. And then came Ocean's 11, the film that cemented his place in the legendary Rat Pack. Led by Frank Sinatra, the group included Sammy Davis Jr., Peter Lawford, and Joey Bishop. They ruled Las Vegas, their shows a freewheeling mix of songs, comedy, and camaraderie. It was here that Dean perfected his persona as the boozy, carefree king of cool, though the glass in his hand was often just filled with apple juice. Throughout these golden years, one person kept him grounded: his second wife, Jean Beggar. A stunning former model, Jean met Dean on New Year's Eve in 1948, and he was instantly smitten. They married in 1949, and for 24 years she was the bedrock of his life. Jerry Lewis himself later called Jean the best thing that ever happened to Dean. She created a stable home for him and their 3 children, Dean Paul, Richie, and Gina, a true sanctuary from the chaos of Hollywood. She understood the quiet man behind the persona. It seemed the good times would never end. Of all his children, Dean Paul Martin Jr. seemed to be the one who got all of his father's gifts. He had the looks, the charisma, and a natural talent for anything he tried. As a teen, he had a pop group, Dino, Desi, and Billy. He became a pro tennis player and even dabbled in acting, but his true passion was flying. Dean Paul found his calling in the sky. He earned his pilot's license and, in 1981, joined the California Air National Guard, wanting to prove himself on his own terms. He rose to the rank of captain, flying the formidable F-4C Phantom II jet fighter. His father was immensely proud. In the cockpit of that powerful machine, Dean Paul had finally found what he wanted to be. On March 21, 1987, Captain Dean Paul Martin, just 35 years old, was scheduled to pilot a routine training mission out of March Air Force Base. As he and his weapons systems officer took off, the weather in the nearby San Bernardino Mountains turned ugly. A sudden, severe snowstorm moved in, making visibility next to zero. The jets climbed through the dense, swirling clouds, and radar contact was lost just minutes into the flight. An air traffic controller frantically tried to warn Martin's jet to change course to avoid a mountain peak looming unseen in the blizzard. It's believed he never heard the warning. It's possible he experienced spatial vertigo in the whiteout conditions, losing his sense of direction completely. His wingman caught a final brief glimpse of the jet as it began a sharp roll before vanishing back into the clouds. Then, silence. The F-4C Phantom, flying at over 400 miles per hour, slammed directly into the side of Mount San Gorgonio. The impact was catastrophic. Captain Dean Paul Martin and Captain Ramon Ortiz were killed instantly. A massive search was launched, but it was hampered by the severe weather. For days, the Martin family waited in agony. Frank Sinatra, Dean's lifelong friend, immediately chartered a private jet to be by his side. Finally, the dreaded news came. The wreckage had been found. There were no survivors. The death of his son didn't just break Dean Martin's heart. It shattered his soul. Friends said he was utterly crushed. The vibrant king of cool was gone, replaced by a grieving father lost in an unimaginable fog of pain. As his friend Paul Anka later said, it was a huge turning point. After his son's death, Dean was never the same. Jean, though divorced from Dean for over a decade, was consumed by the same grief. The tragedy brought them closer, united, in a shared sorrow that would connect them for the rest of their lives. In the wake of his son's death, Dean Martin simply retreated from the world. He shut down completely. The effortless charm was replaced by a hollow-eyed sadness. The easy laughter was gone. He had always been a private man, but now he was a recluse. His friends, especially Frank Sinatra, were desperate to help. In 1988, they organized the Together Again Tour, a reunion designed to get Dean back on stage. They hoped the familiar rush of the crowd would reignite his spirit. It was a disaster. From the very start, Dean's heart wasn't in it. Backstage, at the first show, he reportedly asked Sinatra, "Will someone tell me why we're here?" He went on stage and just went through the motions. After only a handful of shows, he abruptly quit. The official story was a kidney problem, but the reality was he just couldn't do it anymore. He just wanted to go home. That was the final curtain. He retired from public life, finding his only solace in quiet routines. He spent his days watching old westerns, playing golf, and dining out, almost always alone. A reporter who befriended him in his final years painted a heartbreaking picture of Martin going to the same Italian restaurant every night. He'd sit at the same table and order the same dish. The reporter recalled how Dean's ex-wife, Jean, would often be at a nearby table, also dining alone, the two of them sharing a space but lost in their own separate worlds of grief. His physical health declined with his spirit. A lifelong heavy smoker, Dean was diagnosed with lung cancer in 1993. Doctors said surgery could prolong his life, but he refused. It was as if he'd simply given up the will to live. The fight was gone. He had lost his son, and with him, his reason to continue. As one observer put it, seeing Dean in those final years was like looking at a candle without a flame. On Christmas morning, 1995, 8 years after his son's death, Dean Martin died quietly in his Beverly Hills home. He was 78. The official cause was acute respiratory failure from emphysema and lung cancer. As a tribute, the glittering lights of the Las Vegas Strip, the city he helped build, were dimmed in his honor. The King of Cool had left the building for the last time. While Dean's suffering had ended, the tragedy for his family, and specifically his former wife Jean, was not over. Jean never remarried. She and Dean remained connected through their children and their shared history. After his death, she continued to live a private life, the dignified matriarch of a family that would be struck by heartbreak again and again. In 2001, she endured the loss of her stepdaughter, Claudia Martin, who died of breast cancer at 56, but the cruelest twist was still to come. In August 2016, tragedy struck again. Richie Martin, Dean and John's youngest son, a musician who performed a loving tribute show to his dad, was found dead at his home in Utah. He was only 62. For Jean, now 89, and with her own health failing, the death of a second son was an unspeakable sorrow. She had buried her golden boy, she had mourned her husband, and now she had to face the reality of outliving yet another one of her children. Just 3 weeks later, on August 24, 2016, Jean Martin's own journey came to an end. Surrounded by her surviving family, she passed away at her home. She had endured more heartache than most could ever fathom. Her death marked the true end of an era, the final curtain call for a love story defined by both glamour and grief. She was finally at peace, forever linked in memory with the man she loved and the children she had lost. Dean Martin's story is a profound reminder that fame and fortune are no shield against the deepest forms of human pain. He was the king of cool, but he was also a father, and in the end, his love for his son defined him more than any song he ever sang. The intertwined story of Dean and Jean Martin is one of immense triumph and even greater tragedy. It's a love story, bound not only by years of success, but by the shared, enduring grief that marked their final days, leaving behind a legacy that is both dazzlingly brilliant and deeply, heartbreakingly human. If you found this story moving, please consider liking and subscribing for more stories from Hollywood's golden age. Let us know in the comments, what's your favorite Dean Martin song or movie? We'd love to hear from you.